With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Interior Minister Said Sayoud has inaugurated a regional annex in the city of Oran destined to the legalization of documents aimed at bridging the gap between the administration and the citizens. The participants to the 29th Conference of Spanish Interparliamentary Groups have called for an end to the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara, which under international law remains on the list of territories subject to decolonization. Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency have stressed the importance of a constructive commitment to dialogue to reach a lasting agreement on the Iranian nuclear program. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Samani. The President of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, today received the Vice President of the Indonesian House of Representatives Commission in charge of Foreign Affairs, Defense and Communication, Dev Akbar Shah Vikarno, and the delegation accompanying him. During the meeting, the President of the Council highlighted the strength of bilateral relations based on the values of harmony and friendship and affirmed that the depth of these relations will boost the level of cooperation between the two countries, noting that the great potential of both countries allows for an increase in the level of economic and trade exchange, especially in the fields of mining, industry, tourism, and academic training. At the parliamentary level, Boughali praised the level of understanding and coordination between the legislative institutions of both countries, which translates into the coordination of positions and exchange of support in various international forums. For his part, Vikarno considered that the depth of historical relations is an additional factor in strengthening dialogue and consultation between Algeria and Indonesia, giving a strong boost to economic and trade exchange and promoting cooperation and exchange in various fields. As you followed in our top stories, the Interior Minister Said Sayoud, accompanied by the State Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of the national community abroad, Sofiane Shaib, have inaugurated a regional annex in the city of Oran, destined to the legislation or the legalization of documents. The ceremony took place in the presence of the local authorities. In a statement to the press, the Interior Minister hailed the initiative, saying it will contribute to improving the consular services and easing the pressure exerted on the central services in Algiers, which were exclusively in charge of the legalization of documents.
These annexes, which have been inaugurated, are the culmination of the guidelines and instructions given by the President of the Republic in order to bridge the gap between the administration and the citizen, and also to provide services to the citizens, particularly to our community living abroad.
The State Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sofiane Shaib, for his part, said the inauguration of the Oran Annex was part of the Consular Services decentralization policy in order to provide quality services to the citizens.
At the Foreign Ministry, we put the simplification and facilitation of administrative procedures on the top of our actions priorities, and of course the Interior Ministry is a key partner in this operation, which is aimed at improving and digitalizing the consular services.
It is worth recalling that the regional annexes have been inaugurated over the past few days in Constantine Wergla in the eastern and the southern part of the country, respectively. American expert and managing director of the North African risk management consulting firm, Professor Geoff Porter, highlighted the strategic dimension of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project, which will begin shortly, emphasizing in particular its positive impact on the countries concerned and the favorable technical conditions set for its implementation. Mariam Bashi has more in this report.
In a recent analysis note, Professor Porter stated that the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is not unfeasible, it is technically feasible. Compared to other gas pipeline projects in the region and around the world, it is not even particularly complex. It is relatively short overland gas pipeline, crossing two jurisdictions before connecting to existing export infrastructure. This analysis comes after the decision announced by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, during the recent visit to Algiers paid by the President of Niger, Head of State, General Army Abdurrahman Tian, whereby the National Hydrocarbon Company, Sonatrach, has been ordered to begin working on the project by the end of Ramadan. The planned gas pipeline would connect Nigeria's gas infrastructure to Algeria's distribution networks to Europe via Niger and would increase gas supplies to Europe through two existing pipelines, Medgaz connecting Algeria to Spain and Transmed connecting Algeria to Italy. According to the US expert, the 4,130-kilometer gas pipeline connecting Nigeria's gas infrastructure to that of Algeria will have a nominal capacity of 30 billion cubic meters per year, adding that it will benefit the three countries it crosses. Addressing the technical aspects of the project, he developed an argument in favor of the project's implementation while responding to the criticisms raised by some detractors whom he believes are putting forward largely fallacious argument. While highlighting Algeria's experience in the fight against terrorism, particularly in the Sahel, the expert emphasized the central role of Sonatrach, which has evolved considerably, becoming, he said, a hybrid company that also operates internationally. He said the company undoubtedly has the human resources necessary to carry out the project, as well as the financial capacity.
Now, the participants to the 29th Conference of Spanish Interparliamentary Groups have called for an end to the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara, which under international law remains on the list of territories subject to decolonization. The details with Mariam Bashi again.
Representatives of 10 Spanish regional parliaments meeting in Navarre have expressed their recognition of the Polisario Front as the sole legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people, as recognized as such internationally, and expressed their rejection of the Spanish government's position on Western Sahara. In a declaration issued at the end of their two-day meeting, they expressed their commitment to support the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence within the framework of international law, recalling Spain's legal and historical responsibility as the former colonial power and administrative power by virtue of law based on relevant judicial decisions. The so-called Navarra Declaration affirmed the support of regional parliaments for the UN-led political process to reach a just and lasting solution that guarantees the Sahrawis' right to self-determination. In this respect, the Spanish regional parliaments called for the expansion of the prerogatives of the UN mission for the organization of a referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, to include the monitoring and protection of human rights and calling for the appointment of a special rapporteur for Western Sahara to the Human Rights Council. It also called for the immediate release of Sahrawi political prisoners, including those detained at Gdimizik, and an end to violations in the occupied territories, with parliamentary monitoring missions continuing throughout 2026. On the other hand, the participants expressed their rejection of any economic or trade agreements that affect the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination in light of the continued exploitation by the Moroccan occupying authorities of the occupied territories' resources.
Now to the Middle East. One Palestinian has died of wounds sustained during an arrest or an attack carried out by the Israeli occupation army against the town of Beit Lahia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupying forces have pursued their attacks in defiance of the ceasefire enforced last October. Since then, more than 600 Palestinians have been killed and scores of others wounded. Meanwhile, 8 Palestinians, including 3 children, were arrested in the West Bank town of Qalqilia, as well as the locality of Azun. This came as one Palestinian was killed and 3 others, including 1 child, were wounded in 2 separate attacks carried out by Jewish settlers against a village northeast of Ramallah. In the meantime, hundreds of people took to the streets of the Swedish capital Stockholm to condemn the Israeli occupying authorities' recent decision to annex the West Bank. They denounced the planned annexation of the Palestinian territory and called for measures to be taken to address the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Now, Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency have stressed the importance of a constructive commitment to dialogue to reach a lasting agreement on the Iranian nuclear program. This was highlighted by the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, during a phone conversation during which they exchanged views on the U.S.-Iran indirect negotiations. During the previous phone conversation held a few days ago, the 2 men examined the results of the negotiations held in Geneva, as well as mechanisms and requirements related to the preparation of a draft negotiation framework. In this connection, the Iranian diplomacy chief said Iran was focusing on the drafting of a preliminary and coherent framework in order to make the future negotiations more forward. The head of the agency, for his part, described the Geneva negotiations as positive, expressing the agency's will to cooperate to the drafting and to back the process. In an interview carried out by MSNBC, the Iranian foreign minister affirmed that Tehran was considering submitting a draft agreement to the U.S. within 2 or 3 days. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned.
Dear listeners, and welcome on our waves. Today we'll talk about Bouqalat, a tradition that is so popular among women in Algiers. What is Bouqala? Let's know together. Bouqala is a short poem which somehow predicts the future of the person. Generally, it comprises 4 to 6 verses. It was transmitted from generation to generation orally. It can tell of a good thing that may happen to us, as it can foresee the opposite. Algerian women used to gather, and many still do today during the evenings of the holy month of Ramadan, to read Bouqalat for each other around traditional sweets and nuts, accompanied by sherbet drink or the Algerian mint tea. How is it played? Well, in the evening of Ramadan, when the glow of the moon and stars replaces that of the sun, and after iftar or the evening meal eaten by Muslims after the sun goes down, women in Algiers gather to talk and have a good time while playing Bouqalat. Bouqala in origin means a pot made of clay in the shape of a white cup. This container is the main object of the Bouqalat game. Women used to bring this pot, fill it with water, and put a silver jewel inside, notably a ring or a bracelet. Then the pot is passed to the women wishing to participate in the game, so that each of them puts her own bean to identify it during the draw. Finally, the pot is covered with a young girl's shashia or traditional hat. The hat should smell of the incense of benzoin, henna, olive oil, and small pieces of wood taken from 7 different doors. Before starting the Bouqalat game, you have to say this sentence: "In the name of Allah I start. God's peace and blessings be upon His Prophet."
عطر الأنفاس اسقيني نشرب.
Before each Buqala recitation, each woman ties her handkerchief, scarf, or even her belt, thinking of the one to whom she dedicates the Buqala and listens attentively to the recitation. As soon as the game ends, a young woman randomly removes a bean from the container, thus revealing the woman concerned by the Buqala or the short poem, and all others interpret the short poem as they understand it. Then the bean is put back in the container and the operation is repeated several times. If a woman wants to see in the dream if her wish will come true, she puts a sip of the pot's water in her mouth, which she spits out after mouthing her wish. And she gets the answer in the form of signs in her dreams. That's what the tradition says.
عليك ساوي متعندات ساوي متعندات لبسوا موتهم من قفاط عن كل الوان البرمود ديدي والطلس والشكرنط المسجر والقلب حجر والمبر وبالكادولول الشيبي وخريب الكيوس.
Of course, all these steps were not amassed, and the tradition of the Buqalat differed from one neighborhood to the other. And with time, the majority of women who play the game of Buqalat found a lot of superstition in the rules of the game and escaped most of them by just putting the poems inside a pot and picking one Buqala blindly.
بلج مترصعين بالجوهر والعقيان يوم الجمعة خرجوا الريام باش تفاس البالي سربان يحير العقل يوم الجمعة خرجوا الريام.
Poems and being able to recall and read poems was a skill that was appreciated and celebrated in old Algiers. The Buqala game still exists today, but in a less formal way. And nowadays, Algerians in wedding ceremonies wrap the Buqala with the sweets and cakes offered to the guests. The Buqala tradition is still appreciated for being both mysterious. Coming to the end of today's cultural broadcast, let's tie a handkerchief or scarf and listen to this Buqala read by Algerian actress Aida Akshoud. The Buqala says, I went to the beach and found the sand boiling with heat. I took a handful of sand and put it on my lap. Then an angel told me, God will open his doors for you, and the one you are thinking of will come to you safe and sound.
أحبطت القاع البحر وصبت الرمل يغلي رفت بيدي اليمين وحطيت في حجري انتقلي الملك قال لي فرج ربي يجيك سالم غانم بجاه النبي العربي.
Of the holy fasting month of Ramadan, Radio Algeria International wishes all listeners a blessed month filled with peace, joy, and prosperity. May God accept your good deeds.
Sauda bint Zam'a, may Allah be pleased with her, had been the first woman to emigrate to Abyssinia in the way of Allah. Her husband had died and she was now living with her aged father. She was middle-aged, rather plump, with a jolly, kindly disposition, and just the right person to take care of the Prophet's household and family. So Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, gave permission to Khawla to speak to Sayyiduna Abu Bakr and to Sauda on the subject. Sauda accepted, feeling it was a great honor. She went to live in Muhammad's house and immediately took over the care of his daughters and household, while Aisha bint Abu Bakr became betrothed to him and remained in her father's house playing with her dolls. There was great surprise in Mecca that the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, would choose to marry a widow who was neither young nor beautiful. The Prophet, however, remembered the trials she had undergone when she had emigrated to Abyssinia, leaving her house and property, and crossed the desert and then the sea for an unknown land out of the desire to preserve her faith. During the next 2 years, the Quraysh increased their spiteful efforts to destroy the Prophet and his followers. In spite of the clear signs that confirmed beyond any doubt that Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was indeed the messenger of Allah. Perhaps the greatest of these signs during this period was the Prophet's Mi'raj, his journey by night on a winged horse called the Buraq through the skies to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, where he led all the earlier prophets who had lived before him in their prayer, followed by his ascent on the Buraq accompanied by Jibril through the 7 heavens and then beyond the world of forms to the presence of Allah, where he was given the 5 prayers that all his true followers have done ever since. When he described this miraculous journey to the people of Mecca, they just laughed at him, even though he accurately described the Al-Aqsa Mosque to them, and they knew that he had never been there before. And even though he described the place where he had stopped for drinks on the way to Jerusalem, and even though he told them how on the way he had told a man where his lost camel was, and even though he told them that he had seen a caravan which no one knew about approaching Mecca, and that it should arrive later on that day. Even though the Quraysh knew that the Prophet's description of the Al-Aqsa Mosque was completely accurate, and even when they eventually saw the caravan arrive and met the man whom he had helped and saw the place where he had stopped for a drink, they still refused to believe him. Only Sayyiduna Abu Bakr, his closest companion and future father-in-law, accepted the Prophet's account of his miraculous journey immediately. He said, "If he had said this, then it is true." As the enmity of the Quraysh increased, Allah prepared the way for the future growth of the Muslim community in a place called Yathrib. During the time of pilgrimage in Mecca 1 year, 12 men from Yathrib, a small city 200 miles to the north of Mecca, secretly pledged allegiance to the Prophet, swearing to worship no gods other than Allah, not to steal, not to tell lies, not to commit adultery, not to kill their children, not to disobey the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. They returned to Yathrib, accompanied by a Muslim called Mus'ab ibn Umair, who taught them all that he had learned from the Prophet. As a result, the numbers of Muslims in Medina began to increase. And when the time of the pilgrimage came again, this time 75 people from Yathrib pledged allegiance in Mecca to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. This time also swearing that they would defend and protect him, even to the death if need be. After this, the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, gave his followers permission to emigrate to Yathrib. The leaders of the Quraysh realized what was happening and decided to kill the Prophet before he had a chance to join them. However, Allah protected the Prophet, and on the very night before the morning on which they had planned to kill him, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, slipped out of Mecca and hid in a cave called Thawr, which was to the south of Mecca.